But I tell you, a bunch of people who aren't going on holiday, at least Keir Starmer appears to not be going on holiday. They've got too much to deal with, haven't they, at the moment? It may seem like ancient history or just a flash in time, but no matter how you look at it, Keir Starmer today celebrates,
did you say that?
Marks 50 days as Prime Minister.
Well, what a busy 50 days it's been for the Prime Minister, with renewed pressure this week over his government's decision to scrap winter fuel payments.
Yeah, a lot of the headlines are sort of suggesting that they are feeling the heat of scrapping the heat for other people in the country. Joining us now, political commentator Peter Spencer. Good morning, Peter. How do you rate Keir Starmer's first 50 days as Prime Minister?
Well, he has at least outlived the letters, which I think is a good sign. But when it comes to how things are looking for him, I mean, he's been on a very, very steep learning curve indeed to discover it's a mere twinkling of an eye between the moment that the Conservatives are completely rubbish, we've got to get rid of them, and the only solution is to elect a Labour government, to the Labour government is the government, and the Labour government is rubbish. They're just as bad as the Tories. And I mean, sort of, it seems only yesterday that a week in politics was a long time, but these days I reckon 10 minutes pretty well does it. And indeed, you've just referenced the problem of the winter fuel allowance. And indeed, of course, the energy cap has just gone up. And to find that the government is already in a bind with people about the fact that about the fear, I should say, that there's going to be loads of old people dying of cold or whatever in the coming months, puts into very, very sharp relief just what a tough job Keir Starmer has on his hands. And remember, that is just for starters. Consider the fact that the latest tranche of financial information suggests that the British economy is on an even worse trajectory than we thought. And so Rachel Reeves, who was, until it seems only yesterday, the darling of the city, because former Bank of England economist, she knows how to run things. Well, there's going to be a budget in October, and I would suggest that the winter fuel allowance is just for starters. And having been lauded as being the salvation of the nation, she's going to turn into a hate figure pretty much within minutes. Don't envy her. I do have to say that there are distinct arguments against winning general elections.
Difficult decisions are coming in October. Do you think that the Labour Party are going to stick to their guns with this one in terms of winter fuel payment, or do you think we could see a U-turn? Because reports in the Times this morning, Rachel Reeves has been warned that there's widespread support for a U-turn from those in her party.
Yes, indeed, that is very much the case, and that is a real worry. I mean, it is a huge problem. It is a problem, of course, that besets any government. If you come up with an idea which becomes unpopular, do you stick by it and become even more unpopular, or do you reverse it and look as if you haven't got a clue how you couldn't run an orgy in a brothel, frankly, because of the fact you don't know which way you're going at any given point. You look weak, basically. I mean, what we've seen, moving on to, for example, after the riots, the racist riots, and Keir Starmer played a blinder in saying, right, snatch them up, bang them up, problem solved. And indeed, it did nip it in the bud. But it revealed the fact that, or put into very sharp relief, the fact that the crisis within our prisons, writ very large by the fact that the New Deal to create space in prisons means that people are going to be released after 40% rather than half of their sentence. Well, that's not going to kick in for a while. And so magistrates have been told, don't put anyone behind bars for the next few weeks because there is nowhere to put them. I mean, yeah, Keir Starmer, we note, missed out on his summer holiday. I'm sure that the kids were spitting nails about that. But I think it was probably a good call because he does need to be seen to be everywhere, doing everything all at once. Otherwise, he will lose momentum pretty much overnight.
Yes, it's well, he wanted the job, didn't he? So there you go. Peter, thank you very much indeed. Lots more to talk about in coming days, I'm sure.
Yeah, totally different job, though, being in government than it is being in
saying
opposition.
How you want to be in government.
Yes.
I know.
Much more difficult job.
50 days. What do you think? What's your verdict on how he's done? Let us know.
Yes, and we're going through the papers now with Candice Holdsworth and Emma Wolfe. Really good to see you both this morning. Emma, let's start with you, shall we? And look at the front page of the Times. And this is Rachel Reeves feeling the heat over winter fuel benefit cuts.
Indeed. So we've seen this sort of ongoing, mounting furore, really, over the decision to cut winter fuel allowance for those pensioners who aren't on benefits. And it can be worth up to around £300 for the over 80s. And now it seems that she's kind of feeling the heat, I should say, even within her own party. There are MPs privately saying that they may well rebel against this. There are ministers actually coming out and saying, this is not acceptable. They're expressing deep concern at the impact of this. And it comes at a really bad time. The energy regulator have announced this. The energy price cap is rising again. So that'll be another £149 a year on average from the start of October. I think a lot of people are looking forward to the winter and thinking, my goodness, not only are their bills going to be going up by £150 a year, but they're also going to be having that winter fuel allowance withdrawn. And of course, there's the argument that lots and lots of pensioners are quite well off enough to pay for it without. But there is a way of sending it back. People have done this. People have sent back their winter fuel allowance. They could donate it to charity. There are other ways around this, rather than simply cutting it for people who actually really do need it.
Well, it's a double whammy now, isn't it, for pensioners? And we're looking at £450 a year, which to a lot of people is an awful lot of money.
And not what you'd expect from a Labour government. Really.
No.
And that was the shock.
I think that they've really been taken aback by this, and also the accusations that they've prioritised public sector pay over pensioners. And I think the thing that they've failed to understand is that, yes, there are plenty of wealthy pensioners. There are also those that receive benefits, but there are also those in between who operate on very thin margins. And if you cut this is going to really land them in a lot of trouble. And there have been so many calling into radio stations, for instance, expressing their anger at this, and they can't believe that a Labour government has done it. This is why they vote Labour. I wonder, though, if Labour has the political capital to reverse it, though. I think that would be a very difficult case.
It takes a lot of courage at this stage to do a U-turn.
It does, but I also think with reports like this, where you've got a lot of MPs and ministers themselves within the party talking about their concern, I think it would be a popular move. Yeah, it's always painful doing a U-turn, another U-turn, but it wasn't a manifesto promise. In fact, the other way round, it was, many times over the years, Labour have talked about the cruelty towards pensioners. I think pensioners, it's obvious that so many of them are vulnerable. And as you say, those people in the middle who maybe can't apply for the means-tested benefits. It's quite complicated. Everything is online. I know plenty of older people who just go, oh, gosh, I don't even know how to start with all that stuff online. So, there are going to be people who are going to suffer. I think it would be popular, actually, to do a U-turn to reverse this cut.
And now they could actually do it and save face, because they're at the start of their term, they've got 5 years. I mean, now would be the time to push out these controversial policies, which we've literally seen with this cut in the first place. But they could also just U-turn and just say, look, we weren't aware of the backlash. We're now
and they could blame it on the energy price. Exactly.
Yeah, and you could save face and still make a U-turn.
I think Rachel Reeves, trying to be fiscally constrained, she's going to really struggle. I think the times we live in, I think people are relying more and more on the government. And I think she's going to find it hard to get the deficit down as well. She's going to have a lot of spending commitments.
Well, then there are big questions about the, as you say, open chequebook for the unions then.
And if the question on many people's lips is, who are you prioritising?
Exactly.
Labour?
And it was such it all happened in that last week. And it was such a stark kind of, hang on a minute, train drivers sitting in warm cabs who are pretty well paid, and I'm not saying they don't do a good job, but, train drivers are getting this, and at the same time you're cutting that on for pensioners. It's
almost as though
very
you just
bad
get this
look.
feeling that they've always looked upon pensioners as Tory-type pensioners, people who've saved up and got lots of money. And, of course, that's absolutely not the way.
No, it's also people talk about them living in £1 million houses.
Yeah.
But what they don't realise is that you can be asset rich but cash poor.
Yeah.
So you've lived in that house for 30, 40 years, it's increased in value, but you don't actually earn very much. And it's such a misperception, that.
No, definitely is. Do let us know what you think about that. We know you'll have an opinion. gbnews.com/you'll say. Candice, should we look at the Daily Mail? We've been talking about this morning. RFK Jr. Backs Trump as he abandons his own presidential race. It's a bit of a shocker, isn't it?
Yeah. So this is such an interesting story in the Daily Mail. So RF Kennedy Jr., he's now claiming he's suspended his presidential campaign and he has backed Donald Trump because he said that he doesn't want to split the Democratic vote and hand the victory to Kamala Harris. And you think, hang on a minute, fellow Democrat, why is this? Well, I think there is a lot of bitterness amongst some within the Democratic Party for the way that she came to power. They believe it was a palace coup, that Biden was forced out, there wasn't any debate, and they think that she's not a great candidate.
So is this going to change the dynamic of the presidential race? Does this put Trump ahead, or well ahead, of Kamala?
Well, apparently they're tied in the key battleground states. So if you look at places like Michigan, North Carolina, all the places that Trump won in 2016, he's quite neck and neck with Kamala Harris in these states. And I mean, that's how it was in 2020 as well. And you just wonder, is this going to be another presidential race that comes absolutely down to the wire?